Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. All right, welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. And I must say, the very first podcast for 2025. And I'm very, very super stoked to have a man all the way from Seattle, Washington, Mr. Casey Jacox. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. It's I don't get to talk to too many people in Australia, and it's the one place I've never been, but I want to go. And my mother and father-in-law just got back from a cruise around Australia, and I was jealous.
Okay.
So
Nice. How did they find it, apart from the heat?
they loved it. They
Yep.
actually did a 2-month cruise, which I don't know if I
Okay.
could do that, but they loved it. They went
Wow.
around, started from Seattle, and they went all the way to Australia, and then back. They ended I think they ended in Australia, and then they flew home to San Francisco, back to Seattle. But they loved it.
Wow. Wow. Well, what I can say, it's a wonderful country, filled with wonderful people, very, very humble people, very gracious people. But there's also some dodgy people as well. Just say no. But for the most part, us Aussies are pretty good. Pretty good.
Well,
So, Casey, looking forward to this conversation. And for the listeners' benefit, you're a sales and leadership coach. You run a business called Winning the Relationship. You're a speaker. You're an ex-college quarterback. You're also an author. But most importantly, you're also, and I don't say this lightly, you're a podcast host. And your podcast is the Quarterback DadCast. So talking to fathers about all things, I guess, paternal.
Yeah, it's I think I joked to you before we started recording, but it's exciting yet hard to believe I'm in season 6, and I've interviewed over 280 something dads.
Yeah.
And it's one of three pillars that really drive me are humility, vulnerability, and curiosity. And that having a podcast around fatherhood reminds me that as much as we think our jobs are cool or what we did in corporate school, our kids don't care. Our kids don't know what we did. And so it keeps me grounded, keeps my ego at check, and allows me just to learn from other dads and keep me learning.
No, it's cool. It's really cool. And when you think about it, being a parent, being a father in particular, is one of the most important, I guess, jobs, if you want to call it that you'll ever have. Because, we talk about this in leadership where people are always watching your every move. Well, nothing could be more truer than that when you look at, the kids that are watching you and what you do and what you don't do. And you see lots of ads, and even I've experienced this, where you're driving along and all of a sudden something comes from the back seat. It might be a bit of language or a bit of tonality, and you think, "Wow, where do they get that from?" And then you look in the mirror and say, "Yep, that came from me."
Who taught my daughter how to drop an F-bomb? Wasn't me.
Right.
Must be my wife.
Absolutely. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So for the listeners' benefit, love to get a little bit of background on you in terms of what got you into sales in the first place, but also was there a specific moment in your career which led you down the path of doing what you're doing now in terms of working with sales leaders and executives in relation to winning the relationship?
Yeah, you bet. Well, what got me into sales, I would think, is just the opportunity that I think a sales job can provide people. I think, fortunate enough if you can make friends, like Dale Carnegie says, which I told my son that's what I do for a living at age when he was 7, because I couldn't tell him I sold staffing and consulting solutions to Fortune 100 companies. He'd be like, "What the hell does that mean, Dad?" But I always love people, and I love connecting with people. And as a college quarterback, I had to have the people in the huddle like me. I had to have people want to work for me. I had people want to block for me, go run, play hard. And so I think that same mindset as a seller, you have to have back office, finance. I'd have a recruiting team work hard for me, and I'd have clients work hard for me. And so they did that because you built trust and you were likable and you followed through, and kind of the basics of emotional intelligence that I think sometimes isn't taught right now. And so that's one of the things that kind of drive me. So, but I didn't mean to do what I'm doing now, Darren. That's what I think's so serendipitous, or what really fires me up about this is because it happened on accident. I was 20 years at a company called K-Force. I always say right guy, right time, right place. But I was our #1 rep nationally for 10 straight years, left as our firm's all-time leading salesperson history company. And I always say, who cares? Because when I left, the company didn't go out of business, right? So it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. Yeah, am I proud of it? Sure, but life goes on. We're all replaceable. So I remember at the end of my corporate career, I knew I wanted to write a book, but I didn't want to write it when I was still employed because I thought that'd be too easy for me to say as an excuse, like, oh, I'll write tomorrow because and so I
Yeah.
decided just to wait till I was ready to go. And I left on great terms and had, which I'm very grateful for. Like ever leave, you leave kind of part ways, and sometimes it could go the wrong way. But I left on great terms, and I wish
Yeah.
them nothing but the best. And then for 4 months, I scheduled time every day and I wrote,
Okay.
um, and wrote the book. But how I found coaching, it stumbled across me. And I remember one day I was talking to a former client who, when I was an executive at this other company, I was her customer,
Okay.
and she told me she was looking for a sales coach for her vice president. In my mind, I didn't. The story I told myself was, "Well, I'm not certified. I didn't go to coaching school, so it can't be
Yeah.
me."
Yeah.
And it was like the one of the many reasons that kind of kept coming to me, like, "Hey, you should do this, man. This is the voice I'm telling the conversation I have with myself." And then so I reached out to this gentleman named Andrew in Toronto, Canada, and I said, "Hey, I think I'm supposed to become a sales coach or leadership coach because like I keep seeing it, but I'm not jumping at it. And I think the reason I'm not is because I'm not certified. What do you think I should do?" And he goes,
Mm.
"Hey man, can I be honest with you?" I go, "Yeah, that's why I called you." He's like, "Okay, but I don't know if you can take it." I go, I can take it. I think I've thrown 4 interceptions in a stadium. I've been booed. I've been in corporate America. I've been on earnings calls. I've been biggest deal in our company history, biggest flunk in our company history.
Mm.
I think I can take it. He's like, okay, good. He goes, so what I heard about you is you've achieved A, B, and C, and you've done D, E, and F. I go, yeah. He goes, good. Then get out of my mother effing face and stop wasting my mother effing time. And I was like, what? And Darren, this is on a Teams call. He looks up, he holds my book in front of him. He goes, hey, dumbass, here's your certification. You wrote a book about it. You kidding me?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, thank you. And I felt like a fifth grader that got in trouble at recess. I hung up with him. I called the CEO. Her name was Leslie. I called her right back. I said, hey, Leslie, I know you told me you have to go, but you have 1 more minute. She says, you better talk fast. I go, are you still looking for a coach for your vice president? She goes, yeah. I go, I think I found your guy. Can I tell you about him?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. I go, and I described myself, Darren, in third person. She's like, oh my God, who is it? I go, it's me. When do I start? She's like, what? I go, I know. I don't know what to charge you. I do have a business license. I don't have a website, but I'm so confident I can help her that whatever you're going to pay, I'll pay me 75% of what you normally pay a coach.
Yeah.
And after 3 months, if I've not changed your habits, I'll give you all your money back.
Yeah.
And that was 4.5 years ago. I've not looked back.
Wow. Wow. So the catalyst for that, I mean, it was almost like you were, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but searching for permission from that person, but you already knew that you had I guess, the runs on the board, and you probably knew intuitively what to do, but do you put it back to the way that person gave you feedback to say, hey, this is it. Why not?
I I think it was, not lack of belief per se, hence the sign behind me, but it was more of like a little bit of self-doubt, knowing that is this the right path? Because I mean, my identity for 20 years was I was a corporate America guy. I was
Yeah.
top seller, sales executive, leading teams, training people. And now, there's a book called The Second Mountain. So my first mountain was cave forcing, and I came back
Mm.
down. Now the second mountain I'm climbing, well, what is it? Is it am I a
Yeah.
podcaster? Am I an author? Am I a speaker? But I think it was just part of the journey of just like kind of surrendering to, I don't know what the second mountain looks like, but I
Yeah.
know that the things I've done in my life, whether it's sports, business, life, I figured out a way to make it work.
Mm. Mm.
Trust it's going to happen again. So I just had to kind of like surrender and be patient, which is sometimes hard for competitive people.
Yeah.
And I just kind of like leaned in on it. But once I had one person that said, oh my God, where did you know that? Where did you teach? Because I assumed, I don't know about you, but like I assumed the things I knew in corporate, everybody knew them.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that's been the most probably eye-opening thing is I joke with my clients. I feel like I'm on this work release program because I was in corporate for 20 years. And now I'm out of jail, you know, uh, but the fundamentals are there for a reason, and
Yeah.
they never are going to go away. Even like it relates to AI. People ask me about AI. Are you concerned about? I'm like, no,
No.
I'm not. Well, Casey, they could copy your book. I said, go do it. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put my book into Chat GPT and go write a. I'd love for them to do it because
Yeah.
they can't back it up with stories.
No.
I can.
Yeah.
Thousands of them.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting as you're describing all that. I'm thinking there are so many people out there that A are looking for permission to do something, or B, they think they have to have some form of accreditation or they've got to go to, certain school to get a certificate or whatever before they can do the thing. But
right.
most people who are mentors, who are coaches, they don't have the formalized qualification. What they've got is they've got experience, they've got wisdom, but they've got the ability to communicate with people, ask the great questions. And I know you're very big on curiosity and vulnerability and stuff like that. If you're a good human being, and take this back to when you're in sales, people like to do business with those who they know, who they like, and who they trust. You may be the most knowledgeable person, the most smartest person in the room, but if you're not a likable person and you cannot build a relationship, you're going to make it really difficult to convert any sale.
Correct. Yeah, my college football coach, shout out to Bo Baldwin, who's now up in the Canadian Football League. He told me when I was in college, he goes, Casey, if you ever have to tell me how good you are, you're not that good. When you're great, I'll tell you.
Mm,
And I'm 48 years old. I still remember that like it's yesterday. And I thought about that all the time where when I was in corporate, climbing, producing year after year, like the thing that motivated me the most was my CEO at our awards show would say, man, Jacox, you did more this year than you did last year, but you're more humble this year.
mm,
And that was my goal for him to say that. And I'm
yeah,
all I thought about was Coach Bo Baldwin of reminding me that like no one wants to block for an a-hole.
yeah,
Receivers don't want to run routes for an a-hole.
that's it.
It's like I want to be the guy that goes into the weight room like, wait, you can bench that much, or oh, you're a number one salesperson, but you're not an asshole. You're
Yeah,
nice. I'm like,
yeah,
I know. It doesn't cost
yeah.
anything to be nice. It's about just being. We're all people. We're all replaceable. You know.
So let's talk about that because if you talk to a lot of people and you mention the word sales and you ask them, what do you think about sales? Most people, and I know it's a gross generalization, don't have a great thing to say about sales, right?
No.
And if you ask the question, who is in sales, who would like to be in sales, not many people put their hand up, right? So did your approach in terms of the relationship being humble and all the things you talk about in your book, was that more of a evolution? Was that something that was intrinsic in you? Or was it something that you learnt through association, through having the right mentoring and the right coaching through your career?
I think shout out to my parents who raised me well, my coaches who raised me well, my wife who keeps me very, very grounded. Been married 20, almost 26 years, known her since seventh grade. Um, she keeps me super grounded, which I love. But I think a lot of it was experience. A lot of it was just, a combination of all the things. It wasn't like one sales training that I can look back to. Um, but I think a lot of it was just the trial and error, then realizing what worked. And when I decided to write the book, I was like, okay, well, when I was a number one rep for 10 straight years, how did I do it? Was
Mm,
it luck? Was it skill? Was it preparation? Was it the right? I mean, and it really boiled down to really six things. Bring energy to the room, any room,
mm,
positive energy. Set expectations, good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. Always set expectations and get ahead of those all the time. Be a really good listener and know the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is
mm.
subconscious, listening is conscious. Um, Document everything. Fall in love with my CRM. Most sellers
Yeah.
don't like CRMs. They think oh, my boss just wants to manage me. Okay. Well, it's weird that Darren, I was the number one rep, revenue, profit, yet I was also the number one user of our CRM.
Funny
Weird.
about that.
Right. Chapter 5 is all about checking your ego, let your authentic self shine. Don't fake it till you make it. I hate that advice.
Yeah.
Practice. Most sales teams like to wing it. They like to
Yeah.
practice on their clients. And then lastly, I have to have patience. Like if I try to convince someone to buy from me, that's my idea.
Mm,
If I ask great questions of value to expose a problem that I know I can solve for them, they're going to sell themselves. And when people sell themselves, those deals close all the time.
mm,
Now, if I can't help them, I need to be honest and say, I'm not your guy.
mm,
Which is why I joked a second ago about like my son asked me at 7, what do I do? And I told him I make friends for a living. And my buddy's like, dude, you can't tell your son you make friends for a living. He's going to ask for money at recess. I'm like, no, he's not. And so I said, but in my mind, it made sense because if a friend needs help, so if a client needs help, they're my friend. and I say, oh yeah, I can help you, but then I don't, well, that's not a good friend.
Yeah.
If I say, yeah, I can help you, or if I'm not the right friend, I'll find him a different friend. And that's how I explained it to my son, which made sense to him. So if you can't explain what you do to your 7 or 8 year old or your mom or your grandma, maybe we're overcomplicating it a little bit, you know?
I love that. I love that. And when you think about it, it's I mean the approach of being friendly, bringing good energy to the room because we do project, right? So we are, and I always say this to leaders that your team becomes and is a reflection of you. So if you see the behavior in your team playing out, chances are that's resonating from you in the first place, and they're just reflecting that back to you. So, being really conscious of that, and also being able to actively listen, because there are so many. I mean, just think about this: how many times do we actually meet somebody for the first time, and within the first couple of minutes we forget their name?
Totally.
But if you can remember people's names, it actually adds a high level of credibility, which now differentiates you against every other person that is in their environment who forgets their name or doesn't put any value to their name. So it completely differentiates you and elevates you above everybody else. I wanted to ask you though, in relation to your sales career, you talked about having great upbringing and having good people around you. Um, there's a lot of people now going through, we've just come out of the end of for many, the financial year or the quarter. We're now into a brand new quarter and pressure's on to get deals, get numbers. When we talk about relationship, because there'll be people listening to this and say, "Yeah, we get the relationship part. We know we've got to have great relationships, but you don't understand, Darren and Casey. My boss is riding me like a bucking bull, right?" And I said bucking bull, not the other one, right?
Right. And effing.
I've got to get the number. I've got to get, and every conversation is about the number. The cadence is all about the number. What's the gap closure strategy, right? How did you and how do you manage the expectations? Because you talked about expectation setting really well um, around prioritizing the relationship, but at the same time, having a sense of urgency, realizing that the number needs to be achieved because ultimately that's the scoreboard, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I ask that is a lot of people might look at relationships versus winning the deal and they say that's all nice and that might be conditional. I'll do that when things are great, but when things are not, I just got to get the deal, baby.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very fair question. The number of times I've walked away from deals and my boss said I was an idiot,
Hmm.
I was the wrong guy for the wrong time.
Hmm.
And specifically, when you're working with like an enterprise-wide account, the bad news travels a lot faster than good news. Good news is what's expected. Bad news, people, it's like the news. Why do people in the news watch the news? They want to know how people's lives are getting ruined and who's
Hmm.
getting robbed and who's going to jail. I think for me, it's I guess analogy I'll think about in sports. So American football, people who know that. So like as a quarterback, which is the person that gets the ball from the center and throws it to the receivers. If I focus on like, okay, Darren, I got to throw for 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, and we have to win by 56 points. Well, I'm setting myself up to fail.
Yeah.
How about if I just know the offense, compete, uh, give my best on every play, which is about 7 seconds to get back to have a quick memory, focus on that. For
Hmm.
me, if I focus on what's in my control, I can't control how my boss treats me. I can do
Yeah.
my best to set expectations with he or she and try to say, hey, boss, these are the things that maybe I can like, if you want to get the most out of me, here's how I respond. Maybe you have a frank conversation with them. But as it relates to like the end goal, well, the end goal is the end goal. I can't change it. But what I can change is, do I understand my ideal customer profile? Do I understand what problems exist in my industry? Do I understand what problems I solve? Do I understand how do I solve them differently or better than my competition? And then do I understand where's my proof? So
Hmm.
maybe those 4 questions I can tighten up and get into a nice rhythm. Now my messaging is much better. Um, I can control, uh, how I show up on social media.
Yeah.
I can show how I'm following up. So I think all these metrics, I think the transactional metrics are based on whatever product or service you're selling. Sure, they're important, but I think for me, I always focused on what I got taught late in my career, which is called holistic differentiation. How do I make people feel when
Hmm.
they get off the phone with me? Are they like, man, that Casey guy, he was different. He has such
Hmm.
good questions. I've never met a salesperson that actually followed up the way he did. And how did he know all these things about me? And how did
Hmm.
he know, like, versus this guy showed up the first thing and just started vomiting about his products and services, and I didn't know what his name was. And I'm not saying I'm the smartest in the room. I'm not saying my way is the right way. I'm just saying the path I've gone down and the approach to sales that for me, it's worked at a very, very high, at times elite level.
Mm,
And um, I think clients are begging for people to separate themselves.
yeah,
Clients are begging for a few more questions. Clients are begging for people to actually say no versus, that's why I don't know if you've, in your experience, follow a sales process, but I got taught something called medic at the end of my sales career, which I'm a
yeah.
big fan of that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's a fair question. But to me, I still would lean on the EQ or the IQ.
Well, I think it's a really good answer because it's very easy to look at the metrics and focus all your attention on the metrics. And, we've got a product to sell, we've got a service to sell, we've got a gap to close, just go and close it. And you almost have a scattergun approach to that. But if you actually understand your market, if you understand your customers, if you understand the problem that you're trying to solve, and if they have that problem, and if you can articulate that problem in a way that they say, "Oh, there's something different about you," and it's not so much to your company, but it's about you, then they're more likely to lean in and at least explore what the possible solution to that problem is going to be. Which means that if you're looking at the gap, you're going to have a fairly decent chunk of people to be able to talk to, because that's where the patience comes in. Because not everybody's going to be in the buying cycle ready to make a purchase today, but you're always planting seeds. So I'd love your thoughts on this because I'm very much the person that says to people, hey, um, you're going to have to follow up and follow up and follow up. You've got to continue to add value.
Yep.
You've got to be really conscious of how you make your customers feel and leave them
Yep.
with a good impression. It's not about closing at every opportunity, but they're not going to be necessarily ready to buy. So you're going to be thinking about what's the next logical call to action that I can make that at least continues to plant those seeds so that when they're ready, you're the first person they think about.
I think that's why I wrote about CRM.
Yeah.
Every time I would follow up with a customer, every time I didn't realize this at the time, but now that I'm out and at the end of my career, I knew it worked. Every word we say matters. So if I was calling you and I'd say, "Hey, dear, I'm just calling to check in since the last time we spoke."
Yeah.
Well, calling to check in my words, is code for I'm calling to waste your time because I forgot why I'm supposed to call. But if I said, "Hey, Darren, it's Casey with Woodling Relationship. We last spoke on October 10th. You told me to call you on January 6th, specifically about that new project. Tell me, do you have a few minutes?"
Yeah.
Totally different, totally
Um,
different conversation. Every word matters. The person A is not prepared. Person B is very prepared and
mm,
specific. And I showed that I followed up and I listened and I understand what's going on.
yeah.
I always think like every step is before I let you go, tell me when would be the next what would be the best advice you can give me on following up so I can put myself in a position to compete, to have a chance to work with you.
Yeah.
And then whatever you say, that's going to be the first thing I'm going to say when I talk to you again.
Yeah. And that's why the importance of the CRM is such a critical thing because you now put that in because you're not going to be able to remember that. So most sales, and I say this with the greatest amount of respect, most salespeople are quite lazy and they think, you know what, unless there's a sale here and now, I'm not gonna listen to everything that's being said. But if words do matter, then the information you get from your customer could just be the goal that you need to link those conversations together to give yourself the opportunity of delivering value and making a sale. 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 days, maybe 2 years down the track.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's important for salespeople to realize like sales does have a bad connotation because I feel like you're selling something, you're convincing somebody. That's not sales.
No.
And everybody in life is sales. If I want to convince my wife where we're going to go to dinner, either she's going to win or I'm going to win. Someone's going to win.
Yeah.
Or I'm trying to convince where we're going to go on vacation. Someone's going to win that. We're always selling. So,
Mm,
I think when we can ask questions to help uncover like something that I know we do from not my perspective, but a customer's perspective, which I teach people to talk in third person. And before I want to tell someone how I can help them, I always ask a question. Mr.
mm,
and Mrs. Client, tell me, would it be helpful if I shared a story of how we've helped someone like you who had a similar problem?
mm.
What are they going to say? No, I'm not interested in that. Of course they're going to say yes, but when I show respect to ask them a question, which is using curiosity
Yeah.
and pause, yeah, I'd like to hear. Oh, well, maybe I'll even go deeper. Well, tell me why that would be important for you because this is a really big issue for me, and We don't know how to solve this problem. And if there's another company out there that's done it, I'd like to know. Okay, great. Well, let me tell you what we did.
Mm.
Now they're much more likely to be open to hearing the story versus, like I heard someone recently, I love this phrase. He called it pitch slapping, P, like
Yeah.
don't pitch slap me. I think it was a guy named Donald Kelly, who's a sales leader in America. He runs a great podcast too. And I love that he said that because think about the number of LinkedIn requests we get
Yeah.
that, like for me, the number I get at least twice a day. Casey, we're helping coaches and clients like you all around the world quadruple their income by blah, 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 blah. No, thank you.
Who
But if,
cares?
how do you know? How do you know? But if I said, hey, Casey, I noticed you wrote a book called Win the Relationship, Not the Deal. Love the title. I'd love to introduce myself to you.
Yeah.
Immediate, 100%. I'd
Totally.
take that call. It's
Yeah.
about me.
Mm.
And that's what sales is about. It's about just doing a little bit of homework. Because you're right, salespeople are lazy, right? So I think just a little bit of homework and using a question
Yeah.
versus, hey, this is what we do and how we help people and da 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 da. Like everybody does that.
And I think you said it before in terms of, I think you used the word need to have patience. One of the things you need to have as a salesperson as well. If you look at a lot of sales training, and I do a lot of sales training, a lot of organizations that bring sales trainers in, it's all about the product. It's all about the push mentality, right? My approach is, yeah, you've got to have a great product. You've got to believe in your product, but you've got to understand your customers are not looking for your product. They're not waking up today thinking, I think I'll go and buy Casey's coaching program.
Right.
They're not looking for that, right? They're looking for, shit, I've got a problem. Who might have a solution to my problem? So, how do we actually go out there and start talking in a language that resonates with the customer, not pushes a product onto a customer? Because that's where you get a lot of the immediate defense mechanisms that push up. So, having that level of humility, having that level of patience is really critical. And as you say, LinkedIn is a classic, and I get it all the time as well. I'll get a pitch within the connection request, and I'll often accept that connection request because I want to see what happens next. And
Job
and
security for you.
well, it's just fascinating. And I had one guy, and I won't name him, but yesterday he sent me like 15 messages, one after the other. And one of the messages were, I'm still waiting for a response. Thinking, really? Okay. So all he was wanting to do was he
Wow.
wanted to promote his services to me, but didn't ask me any questions whatsoever. So am I
It's
going to do any
amazing.
business with him? Probably not.
Right. Why would I?
No.
Right. Why? And well, I love me. And I guess the other thing is about patience is important, but I think having abundance is even more important because there's so many people that do either what you and I do.
Hmm.
I service one of my industries I came from, what is the staffing consulting industry. There's 22,000 plus staffing companies in America.
Yeah.
That's a big market.
Yeah.
And I've had sales coaches on my podcast, like we're talking. I've helped them start a podcast. I've helped them get going. And people are like, wait, you want to help me? I'm like, why wouldn't I? So people help me. But we are competitors. I said, well, maybe, but not really. You didn't write a book called, we wrote different books. You you really want to help? I go, yeah, there's enough for all of us out there. And there might
That's
be a
it.
time where you might remember me. You're like, you know what? I'm not the right guy, but this dude named Casey is your guy.
Yeah.
Same thing for me. If I can learn more about you and there's a more, maybe a client has a more operational P&L metrics driven than not much EQ, well, maybe
Hmm.
that's a better fit for you.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes when you get so close minded and you get territorial, which most salespeople do. Oh, that's my account. No, it's not. You don't own it. Your company does.
Mate, as you're talking, I'm thinking, oh my God, I was just going back to my corporate days. And I left corporate 10 years ago this year, but there were times when the patches were so ring fenced. And
Oh
even
yeah.
if one of my salespeople had a relationship in a customer or a prospective customer that was linked to another salesperson, no, no, this is mine. You can't go and talk to them. But it's like, well, we all win. If we help, if we actually serve, then it's amazing what will actually come back. But this pervasive attitude of I've got to ring fence this, I've got to protect mine, I've got to, and even to the point where, hey Casey, I know something that you don't know, and I'm not going to share that with you because I think I've got an advantage over you. That if I share this, I'm no longer going to be above you.
Right.
Really? Get over it. Get over
Right.
it.
So this is I'm going to share my ignorance. It did the boomerang, do you think was it actually developed? Did it first start in Australia?
That's a really good question. And I don't want to show my complete and utter ignorance here, but I'm not sure.
So hey, we'll assume it is. And I think it's perfectly because you made me think of it. So I teach this too, and I call it having a boomerang mindset. So boomerang mindset to me is going out of your way to serve others. It could be serving a client. It could be serving. Maybe I'm gonna ask the client for let them go. Hey, tell me how I can help you grow your business.
Yeah.
Hey, what? But that's not a. You're not selling me. Yeah. Tell me, is there anybody else I can connect you with? Maybe I'm on LinkedIn.
Mm,
And I'm saying, you know what? I was on Darren's podcast. You guys should talk to him. You should have him. Maybe you've had me speak a couple times. You should have listen to him. He might be another voice.
mm,
But I always tell people don't keep score.
mm.
And so, as a leader, how often are you maybe coming into your office for those that are returned to office, and maybe you just show up with four coffees. And it's the favorite coffee of your four leaders that
Yeah.
no expectation. Hey, thought about you. Maybe you go out of your way to write a handwritten note to somebody.
Mm,
Um, appreciation takes time, recognition takes money.
yeah.
So, but the thing is, when a boomerang mindset is not working, it'd be like if I buy you coffee a couple of times and then one day I show up to work, I'm like, hey, Darren, you owe me $14.38 for those coffees. So I was really expecting you to buy me one because that's why I bought you one because I was hoping you're gonna buy me one back. Since you didn't, like you lose it,
100%.
And
100%.
so I think I don't know. In my experience, I think when we do these things as leaders, when leaders, either you're a sales leader or you're an internal leader, and you focus on being uncommon, doing
Yeah.
things that isn't always the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
If you're a leader that is talking for 55 minutes of your 60-minute meeting, is it about you or them?
I
Are
think we
you
know the
vulnerable
answer to
enough
that.
to share? Yeah. Are you vulnerable enough to share where you've messed up,
Yeah.
where you suck in your career? If you
Exactly.
haven't done that, probably a great outcome of our conversation today. Go share where you failed
Yeah.
and watch the curiosity go up in your team, the humility go up, and just the fear go away.
Mm. The other thing it does as well, particularly as a leader, is gives permission, excuse me, permission for your team to say, you know what, I don't have to be quote unquote perfect. I actually can make mistakes and it's okay because my leader has actually made mistakes and they've been brave enough to share those mistakes and
Bingo.
the world didn't implode, right? So
Right.
giving
100%.
permission is a big thing. And I think when it comes to then the selling part and whether you're a sales leader, whether you're an individual contributor, I think building the relationship, you've got to bring a level of authenticity to that because when you think about it, people only want to do business with those who they know, who they like, and ultimately who they trust. And there are some out there who can, as you mentioned it before, they will fake it. And I see this all the time with salespeople being all over their customer, right? Doing everything what, according to the book of sales excellence, is what you're meant to do. But as soon as the sale is made, it's like they've disappeared. It's like David Copperfield. They've made the Statue of Liberty completely disappear. I don't know how he did that, but that's another story. But you've got to be there for the long haul, right? And you've got to be genuine. So let's talk about the what you cover off in relation to the three superpowers in sales: humility, vulnerability, and curiosity. We've kind of already touched a little bit on the curiosity part, but let's talk about humility in particular, because when you think about sales and humility and put those two together, most people, gross generalization, will not have those two words together. How important is it, and why do you say it's a superpower?
It's a superpower because it's uncommon. I think most top performers, they think they start feeling like they've made it. They start feeling like um, he or she's entitled because I sold 4 million. You've only sold 4. I'm better than you. No, you aren't. Um, I think uh, when you can show humility, when someone says, "Hey, you had a great year," well, I had a great year because I have a great team.
Mm,
I have a great year because my back office team got those invoices sent on time. And if they didn't send the invoices on time, then my customer can't pay on time, which means my commissions can't be paid on time. I'm grateful for them.
mm,
You're constantly, and it's not fake. It's just you have to be genuinely like embrace humility and figure out, okay, if you're not humble, probably your ego's getting in the way. And I think
yeah.
one of the most simplistic ways to find out if your ego's in the way is one of my leaders, my very first job out of college, he asked me a question. He said, "Do you want to be right or do you want to get what you want?" I go, I want both. He goes, you can't. You got to pick one. I'm like, huh. Okay. Uh, I want to get what I want. He's like, good answer.
Yeah.
He goes, now if I'd have said I want to be right, Casey, what does that tell me? I go, probably means I'm an arrogant a-hole.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like, your ego's in the way.
Yeah.
Now, there's times you might get both, but for me, that advice helped me dramatically in my world where I came from, the consulting industry. Because if I had a team of consultants that I thought they were perfect, they were awesome, they were like the best people in the world, and I tried to convince my client that you had to hire these 5 people to help with your ERP project, but they're like, I don't think they're the right fit.
Mm.
No, they're the right fit. What are you, an idiot? These guys are, what are you, dumb? No, they're perfect. Well, now I'm an idiot versus, well, great. Well, tell me why they're not perfect. Maybe I
Yeah.
got to lean into curiosity again. So I don't know. I I think humility is a superpower, like I mentioned, because it's not many people are humble, so you can
Mm.
separate yourself. Uh, B, when you are humble, people are going to work harder for you. They're going to stay
Mm.
late for you. They're going to go out of your way to do things for you because you're always thinking about someone else. It's like servant
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah.
Um, and I just think life's a lot more fun to be around people who are. It's about other people. Be interested, not interesting.
Well, it's such a and it's such a power, and many people say, well, that's a cliche, but it's so powerful when you actually think about it. If you and salespeople, again, the gross generalization, they spend so much time trying to be interesting to their customer. Why? Because they want to sell a product or they want to sell a service. They want to convince them that they
Mhm.
are right, that they have the best product for them, right? I know better. So, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, please be quiet while I do my closing sequence here, please.
Right.
But if I focus on being interested, and I say this to teams all the time, if you focus on being genuine, and it has to be genuine, this is not faking it, you have to be genuinely interested in another person. Through that process, a funny thing happens. In many cases, you become interesting to that person. And why is that? Because when you're genuinely interested, you're spending your time focusing on the other person and asking questions that are genuinely about them. You're not talking about yourself because who cares? Nobody cares about you.
No, they don't. Do you ever golf?
And I noticed the two golf clubs in the back on the back corner there. I used to be a golf addict, but I must admit I haven't played golf, and it's getting a bit away now. It's December the 10th, 2008. It'll be
Wow.
17 years this December that I haven't played.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's no real reason for it other than we moved and I handed in my golf membership and had two young kids and moved to a bigger property and lots of other things. Life gets in the way, but I just hadn't got back to it. But I love it. I actually love it.
Yeah, I love, so my son plays golf in college, and and he and I, that's like our passion. We love playing together, and thankfully I still play. I probably play 60 rounds a year or so.
Okay.
So not a ton, but I would say more than most. But the reason I asked about golf is I think there's one of my leaders. He had a great analogy that I think really speaks to even if you don't in golf. There's in most
Mm,
people don't in a round of golf. There's 18 holes, front nines 9 holes, back nines 9 holes. So if you think about it like a sales conversation, like a golf course, the first 9 holes are about them.
mm,
You have 9 holes to ask questions to figure out, what's important to them, why they want to spend time with me, do they understand what we do we really know? Are we guessing?
yeah.
By about the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th hole, then that might have a chance to try to like bring the conversation back to us through
Mm,
questions about understanding, hey, based on what I think I heard from you, maybe I think we could help you based on how we help other customers would be available, would be of
mm,
interesting. But it has to be on their terms. I mean, it doesn't always have to be that way, but if I could have a higher percentage of the time where customers are closing themselves
yeah.
versus me trying to close them, I'm going to win more people. I'm going to get more referrals. I'm going to have more what I call champions,
Yeah.
which most sellers, they think they have, but they don't. Um, and it just takes the assumption out of play.
Yeah. It
Um,
does. I think the how you've used that analogy is really powerful because what most salespeople are trying to do is convince and close the sale, not necessarily saying, well, hang on a second, I've got to remove myself from the outcome because I am the least important person in the room because it's not about me, right? Yes, I've got a product that I need to sell. Yes, I've got to hit numbers and all that sort of stuff. Put all that to the side for a second. I'm here to serve. Now, if you come back to your abundance mindset, you need to understand there's a lot of customers out there, a lot of potential customers that are crying out for help that you have a solution for, right? You just have to put yourself in the right position to actually match them and meet them, right? When you do that, ask them about themselves. Get them talking about themselves. And as you say, they'll end up closing themselves. You still have to ask them what they'd like to do in terms of what's the next call to action, but they're more likely to stay with you. They're more likely to refer others to you. They're more likely to come back and purchase again because of how you made them feel.
1,000%. Could
Yeah.
not agree with you more.
Yeah, which is all about humility. But let's talk then about the vulnerability part. And Case, you've kind of touched on it a few times throughout the conversation,
Mhm.
leading with the mistakes or talking about your failures and so forth. My own experience is the best leaders I've ever worked with are the ones that are not perfect. They are a work in progress. They are one of the most fundamentally flawed individuals on the planet. They don't make excuses, but they're just real. And they're open to feedback, but they're more than happy to put themselves in front of people and make mistakes and own them. What are your thoughts on that superpower in terms of vulnerability and how powerful it is?
Well, like Brene Brown, a very famous speaker, author in the United States. She's done work worldwide.
Mm,
She wrote about vulnerability, PhD, University of Houston. To me, vulnerability. I was talking about vulnerability. I was in corporate, and some of my buddies when I was in corporate, they're like, "What are you talking about vulnerability? Like, what the hell?" But to me, it was like, but no, if I'm considered the top person, yet I can ask questions and not have everything figured out, what's that going to do for the people who are quote unquote below me? Well, they're going to want
mm,
to ask questions too. And then at the end of my corporate career, I learned about something called the Socratic method, which is,
mm,
a Socratic method of leadership, which is, summarizing, it's asking questions before you give someone the answer. So,
mm.
for example, Darren, let's say that you report to me and you come in, hey, Casey, I got this problem. And what do you think I should do? Da, 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 da. And I'd be like, oh, great. Tell me what you think. Well, I don't know. I don't know the answer. Well, who cares? Let's just take a guess.
I
You think
came to
I
you
have
for the
everything
answer.
figured out? Right. Maybe you're going to be right. You never know. Oh, okay. And then maybe they say something to you, you're like, oh God, that's a great idea. What else? What else? Tell me what else comes to mind. And you encourage people to want to ask questions. So that's why I think the vulnerability and curiosity goes hand in hand, because if your team is not asking questions in a meeting, or if you're not inspiring a environment to them to ask questions, there is fear that's hiding in your company.
Yeah.
And fear loves to erode a sales culture or any culture, because then it allows our ego to get more in the way and block
Yeah.
us. But we have no fear to ask any questions, and even your customers. So, like, and I learned this the hard way. I talk about it in my book. So, like, when I was in the staffing business or consulting business early in my career, I remember I went and met with a customer, and the client said, "Hey, we're looking to hire two technology consultants with skill A, B, and C." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, yeah, great, we can help you with that." But then 100%, that's us. We got you. I had no idea what A, B, or C was. I just wanted to look smart and tell them. So I went back to my office and I met with my recruiting team. They're like, "Hey, I think I got this new client. They're excited to work with us, da, da, da. And they need skills A, B, and C." And my recruiting team was like, "Well, what does that mean?" I'm like, "I don't know. I didn't ask them. I was too scared." "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, how am I going to help them?" "I don't know. You're the recruiter. Figure it out." I mean, not a good teammate. And then they're like, we're not going to work on it until you go ask it." And I was like, "What?" So I had to go back to the client. And instead of me just doing it by myself, I said, "Would you join me for the call?" And I want to apologize to the client in front of them,
Yeah.
because I think it'll show humility and I'll own it. And then I think you'll hear it directly from the manager's mouth, and then we'll get some buy-in.
Mm,
Like, sure. So just by doing that, uncommon,
yeah.
most people in the industry weren't doing that. But B, I learned I don't have to have everything figured out.
Mm,
My job, like I told, like I teach companies now, but even myself, I said, my job isn't to be a technology expert. My job when staffing was to give you access to people that you couldn't find by your own. That's my job.
yeah.
So if you're expecting me to be a computer science expert, a AI expert, I'm not your guy. And that's okay. So I think again, full circle here, just summarizing, I think, if as I'm speaking, this is like, no, that's not my culture. Maybe you go ask your team at your next sales meeting, "Hey, I listen to this podcast. Tell me, has there been a time where I've ever made you guys feel afraid to ask a question?
Mm.
Great. Tell me why."
Yeah.
Or tell me, have I ever told you guys when I was really almost fired in my job and I sucked really, really bad? I'd love to tell you about it, just to make sure that you know that, hey, we're all learning. We all have a different path. We're all going to, some are going to learn faster than others. Some are going to learn slower than others, but I'm here to support you.
Mm.
And the more that you are honest with yourself and the more that you realize it's okay not to know every answer, it's just not okay not to do anything about it. We got to own it. And when we do that, the truth will set us free and
Yeah,
we'll grow a lot faster than letting our ego get in the way.
absolutely. Absolutely. Which is all culture, right? And you've got a leader that is able to do that. Excuse me. It sets the tone, it sets the environment for the people within the team to say, you know what, I don't have to have all the answers. And there is no such thing as a silly question. The only silly question is one that goes unasked. So, if, what you did in that story is you didn't ask the question, but you went back and you ate humble pie. Let's, for form of a better term, and say, give me another opportunity, and I didn't know this, and it's not making excuses because there are some people that almost they expect to know stuff, or others expect them to know stuff, and therefore I can't ask Casey this question. I can't say this because what if he thinks I'm stupid? Or what if, here's the thing, what if they work out that I'm the imposter that I think I am, but then everybody else is going to figure that out?
Right. It's going to come out eventually.
Can't do that.
Mm-mm.
Versus if you just own it and say, you know what, I don't know everything. It's okay. It gives other people permission to do exactly the same thing. And it breeds a better environment.
Can I tell a story on vulnerability real quick too?
Please.
So this is like 2 years ago, I was speaking. A buddy of mine I worked with for years, he had me come in to speak at their annual sales kickoff. There was like 250 people in the room, we'll say, maybe more. And the head of marketing, right before I go on, he goes on. And in his last slide, he goes, he guys, sometimes everybody, we got to fake it till you make it. Sometimes we got to convince people that we don't know everything to everybody. And I'm like, oh my God. Uh, I'm starting to sweat it internally because like Darren, in my presentation, I have a slide that says, don't fake it till you make it. The exact opposite. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm like, screw it. I have a weird sense of humor. Most quarterbacks in America, we gotta screw loose and we like to have a lot of fun. So I said, and I love movies, funny movies. So I went to like one of my favorite Will Ferrell movies, old
Yeah.
school. And there's a part in that movie where Vince Vaughn talks about earmuffs. The baby, cover the ears because we're gonna say something. And so I said, hey, nice to meet everybody, but I'm on stage. I go, hey, before we get started, I need to clear the air real quick because I don't want to get awkward here in about 35, 40 minutes. And they're like, what? What is weird? Who's this guy? And I go, has anybody seen the movie Old School? They're like, oh yeah, good. I said, remember the part when Vince Vaughn talks about earmuffs and he doesn't want to, oh yeah, they laugh. I go, okay, I need everybody to go earmuffs except for the vice president of marketing. He and I are going to have a quick little chat. And I'm looking down at my buddy's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to lead into vulnerability. Right. And
Yeah.
so I go, hey, I just want to apologize to you. In about 30 to 40 minutes, I'm going to convince your team to do the exact opposite of what you just told them. And I don't want you to be mad at me. And if you can be open-minded, then I'll be open-minded. Maybe your way is better than my way, but maybe my way is better than your way.
Yeah.
We can agree to disagree, but I just ask for a little bit of forgiveness, a little bit of grace. All right, earmuffs off. But it totally just set the tone.
Yeah.
It took, and it mainly selfishly was for me, not them,
Mm.
because I had to get that anxiety out of my body or I was going to be a
Yeah.
disaster.
Yeah.
It ended up being, it ended up going great, way better than I ever thought. Executive team said, oh, yeah, I can't believe you did that, but what a great, I thought about it on the fly,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
But that's a great way of utilizing, because how often do you see that where somebody you're about to follow says something or puts up a slide that delivers a message that's completely different, or completely opposite to what you're about to do. And I mean, to be authentic, you're there to do a job, right? And it's a really clever way of doing it, because that would have lightened up the room. And it could have gone either way, right? You could have,
totally.
it could have crashed and burned. But it's
But
like,
at least,
again,
yeah,
not being attached to the outcome, but you were being genuine around that and to say, hey, this is what I believe. Hey, I'll be judged for it, but that's okay. This is where I'm going anyway. It's all good.
well, I had the courage and confidence and belief, hence the side behind me. I think early in my career, I wanted to be liked by so many people, and I still like to be
Mm.
liked. But I have peace knowing that there's going to be some people who think that guy's a complete tool. What an idiot. Okay. That's
Well,
okay.
let them think that.
Right. That's okay.
Yeah.
Because the more I just kind of forgive, or I try to like, you know, do what I do that I know works,
Yeah.
not in an arrogant way, but in a confident way, and constantly be open minded to there might be a better way downstream,
Yeah.
and realize that some people they might love it, and people that don't love it, don't try to force it.
Mm.
Be patient. Maybe
Yeah.
they eventually will, maybe they won't. That's okay. But trying to spend time with people that, I think the 80-20 rule leadership, spend time with, 80% of the people that like are thinking what you're thinking, and versus trying to convince the 20% that think I'm a tool.
That's
No
it.
thanks.
That's it.
You know,
That's all good. What a great way to wrap this up. Casey, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. So, for people who are listening, I'd like to know more about you and getting access to your book. Where's the best place for them to connect with you?
I would say Amazon's the best way. It's you can get it all around the world. If you like to read, there's a old school book, there's a Kindle version of it, and there's actually the Audible version. I actually recorded it myself.
Okay,
That was a lot of fun
nice.
doing that. I'd say the best. If there's any dads that want to listen to the podcast, we're on Apple, Spotify. It's called the Quarterback DadCast. And I'm excited, everybody. We agreed. Your esteemed host, Mr. Darren Mitchell, has agreed to become a future guest on my podcast. So I'm going to return the favor. We'll be asking him questions. So what? Make sure that we link everybody up in the future so they can listen to. Well, roles will be reversed.
I love it. Love it. Looking forward to that, and I'll try to bring as few dad jokes as possible
We
to
encourage
the,
dad jokes.
to the table. Oh, my kids always say, "Oh, Dad, when you did a facilitation today, how many dad jokes did you bring out?" And so I do it so often now that I don't know what dad joke is or what it is, and I just do stuff. So it's fascinating. Casey, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I know you've got a coaching call to get ready for, so just want to thank you for spending some time and sharing some absolute gold nuggets with me on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. Been a fantastic conversation.
Been an honor to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Thanks, mate. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.